Hey everyone, so we are Group 1 and we are going to discuss Module 1 of SocSc 12, which is Living and Experiencing Modernity. So before we move on to the main parts, we would just like to share the contents of our discussion today. So we're going to start with the summary. Up next, the arguments, central points, and issues. And the next one is theory application. Fourth one is critique. And last but not the least, the highlights of the module. So that's it. And yeah, I'm Ara. Nice to meet you all.
Hello everyone, I'm Luis.
Hi, I'm Fernandez.
Hi, I'm Aireez.
Hi everyone, I'm Via.
Hi everyone, I'm Andre. So now that we have finished introducing ourselves, we will now be moving on to a quick summary of what Module 1 is about. Again, Module 1 is entitled Living and Experiencing Modernity. This module highlights the different lived experiences, narratives, and perspectives of modernity that shape individuals and communities at a micro and macro level. It also caters to the recognition of subjectivity in terms of said modernity, prompting the emergence or formulation of a more nuanced or diverse understanding in engaging the idea and experience of it. With that being said, what do the materials found in Module 1 talk about? Firstly, The Promise by C. Wright Mills discusses how the life and actions of an individual is affected and influenced by society and the events around them. And through a concept called the sociological imagination, we can understand the life and experiences of other individuals. Moving on, we have Bruce Knopf's Critically Modern, an introduction, which talks about how the concept of modernity has become a global phenomenon. Yet these global manifestations of modernity are not the same, and that there are multiple modernities. Similarly, Hannah Bullock's Multiple Meanings of Development discusses how there isn't a single narrative or idea of development, but rather, development and ideas of development vary between different people and places. There is also Jonathan Friedman's Modernity and Other Traditions, which talks about the concept of modernity in relation to traditions and culture. Modernity here is identified as rational, universal, and progressive. Friedman also discusses that there are alternative modernities that are the products of social and cultural transformations. And lastly, we have Chimamanda Adichie's TED Talk entitled The Dangers of a Single Story, which tells us to avoid what is essentially stereotyping by taking into account multiple perspectives and experiences, rather than use one so-called story to paint a picture of someone or something. So now that we have discussed what Module 1 is about, what exactly is the problem that can be found within it? What issues can we see in relation to this discussion? We believe that the problem here is the concept of Western centrism. The mainstream understanding of modernity is grounded in Western centrism. This fails to account for the nuances of a multicultural world, which calls for the need of new understandings and alternatives to modernity.
Thank you, Andre, for the summary of the module. Now we move on to related arguments, central points, and issues. First, there is Mills' The Promise. Firstly, Mills argues that scholars, journalists, artists, editors, and the like need the sociological imagination as a state of mind to utilize information and reason out what is happening to them and the world. Next, he points out that the individual can understand his or her own experience by understanding the time he or she is in, by understanding all other individuals' experiences in his or her circumstances as well. Then Mills states that social analysis is best composed of questions that fall under the sociological imagination, to shift from one perspective to another, and understanding remotely or transforming towards the more intimate aspect of the human self. Next is Bullock's Narratives of Development, where she first points out that the different discourses of development provide for shaping different subaltern subjectivities and are better seen as reshaped bases of circulating ideas and beliefs. Then she states that compared to social evolution, modernization theory is more focused on economic factors, despite also assuming the same idea as the former idea, but becoming synonymous with development. Lastly, she states that the social hierarchy plays a symbolic role in development discourses, of which do vary. Now we move on to Friedman and Knopf's articles, which are discussed by Louis Banzon.
Bruce Knopf and Jonathan Friedman talk about modernity in the book entitled Critically Modern. Knopf opens with the fact that modernity is a concept that has become global through the rise of new standards of social advancement and progress that are dependent on cultural and historical conditions. Friedman agrees with Knopf, highlighting the multiple usages of the word modernity. This concept can be understood as a differentiated and variegated process resulting in alternative modernities, which is important as both Knopf and Friedman argue that the notion that being or becoming modern is heavily influenced by Euro-American economic, social, or cultural development, which must be critically examined. The mainstream understanding of modernity is the cultural field of commercial capitalism, its emergent identity space. This is a product of European capitalist society that is inapplicable to the understanding of non Western societies. This necessitates the finding of new ways to understand our version of modernity, separate from the mainstream.
For our theory, the group believes that the intersectional theory is relevant in addressing the issue at hand. So, according to the Oxford Dictionary, intersectionality is a framework for conceptualizing a person, group of people, or social problem as affected by a number of privileges, discriminations, and disadvantages. Intersectionality is then crucial in providing a more diverse outlook as it aids in acknowledging the other interlocking narratives, recognizing unique identities, avoiding the development of a single story by oversimplifying or worse erasing their experiences, and diversifying social relations and lived realities. Ultimately, intersectional theory provides a social analysis by situating the experiences of people, which expands paradigms or worldviews with the plural ways of understanding social issues and development. Okay, so in terms of applying the theory in our issue at hand, the theory presents an off centered paradigm that strays from the fallacy of oversimplification by mainstream Western concepts. Firstly, the intersectional theory takes a sharp contrast to this propagation of neocolonial consciousness by establishing positionality. It prompts us to recognize that a multitude of identities such as race, gender, socioeconomic status, informs our social and political identities, which make our contexts and experiences of modernity different from one another. The theory also allows for the recognition of a multicultural setting and their influence on varying experiences and identities. This border pedagogy combats the privileged Western outlook that imposes the existence of singular identities and exclusionary positions of individuals and peoples. Intersectionality lastly acknowledges the diversity in perspectives of human experiences, debunking the imposition of first world ideals in social systems and structures, and in the very way we view modernity.
And now that Reese has introduced to us the theory that we'll be using for this discussion, I will tackle into how we can specifically apply it into the Philippine context. So, in terms of the social realities in the Philippines, it is obvious that even at present, we still put the West on a pedestal. Colorism, for example, is heavily ingrained into our society, starting from our upbringing as children and then reinforced by our media, saturated with light-skinned celebrities, proclaimed as the standards of beauty, as well as the easily accessed skin whitening industry. We also see this preference for the West in our language. English is already the set medium of instruction of our education system, and even in less formal settings, people still hold the belief that those who speak in English are somehow smarter or better than those who speak in Filipino. Using the intersectionality framework, some of these current realities may be addressed because it encourages us, as Filipinos, to not look at the West as the sole standard of things, and to be able to explore the more marginalized paradigms that we have in society. Examples of this can be seen in the Magandang Marengs movement that advocated for the acceptance of Filipinos with darker skin and the rejection of colorism. In terms of language, there are already existing initiatives that seek to preserve our many diverse Filipino languages through dictionaries, films, and writing workshops. The intersectionality framework is seen in these examples because they serve as a critique of the dominant narratives and systems that exist in our society and push forward a new paradigm that is more welcoming of the many different perspectives and cultures that we have in the Philippines.
So now we critique the module in terms of its impact on our perspective towards modernity. So this module has been able to give us an overview of how modernity is not to be seen as linear, but instead to look at it holistically as it varies per lived experience. Despite this, a budding critique from this module is how efficient and feasible is our pursuit of alternative modernity, given that globalization is the prior commitment of the nation that subscribes to the traditional concept of modernity. So based on the classical social theory, the only way we can observe the feasibility of an alternative modernity is when we single out or identify first the problems in our own society that are caused by Western views. So once accomplished, then that is the only time where we can develop and explore once again our own culture and traditions that are deemed useful for us, a member of the Global South, to advance universally through our own strands. So a concrete example to support this notion is the Republic of China, or ROC. So before being known as an Asian country that dominates the world economy, ROC used to be a poor developing country due to its isolation from the world. So to rise from this, Jiang Zemin, the president after Mao Zedong, has given value to foreign trade and investment, all while establishing and promoting Mandarin as the lingua franca for trade. So instead of letting the West dominate their society, ROC has done otherwise. In fact, even asserting more of the cultural influence globally. So despite this example of successfully establishing an alternative modernity, we must also take into consideration our country's historical context, such as the centuries worth of colonization that continues to affect our modern perception in the Philippines. But we believe that if we just use international relations to our advantage together with establishing our traditional influences globally, we too will be also able to efficiently execute and establish an alternative modernity in our society. So thank you.
So lastly, we would now like to discuss our highlights or our insights and main takeaways from this module. Firstly, the module has immensely changed our perception of modernity. As a group that has been given the privilege of education, we were always taught to chase Western ideals or follow Western standards. However, as we go through the module, we learn that the Western ideals and standards might not exactly be what is ideal for our context, hence the need for an alternative or more nuanced and diverse understanding of the concept of modernity, which the module is able to give us an idea of. In relation to this, another key takeaway we have was that the module allowed us to identify and question the pervasiveness of the Western-centric notions within our community and society. In a way, the module opened our eyes to see these Western-centric notions and some of the issues that this has in store for us. Like I said previously, the Western ideals and standards might not be what is ideal for our context. With that being said, this module can lead us to question if it would be best for us, in our path to modernity, to be able to attain the Western ideals and follow Western standards, or if it is even beneficial for us to attempt to do so in the first place.
That concludes our discussion for today. Thank you everyone for listening and see you in our next YouTube video. Bye!